Suspicions. Beverly investigates, and that's in quotes, a mystery, and that's also in quotes.
Beverly is hanging out in her quarters, and she's annoyed when someone keeps ringing her doorbell, who turns out to be Guinan. We haven't seen Guinan in a while.
I don't really mind the doorbell noise, but hearing it happen so many times in a row, it would get really annoying really fast.
Yeah, you'd think Guinan would have gotten the message and just stopped trying. Or maybe assumed she wasn't in.
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she could ask the computer, right? Where's Beverly? And it'll be like, she's in the restroom.
Can anyone do that? Wouldn't that be kind of an invasion of privacy?
You think they care?
Guinan says she needs help with her tennis elbow, and Beverly tells her to go to sickbay because, what the f***? When Guinan says she's particular about her doctor, Beverly says she's not a doctor anymore.
Well, you better get a new one, because I'm not a doctor on this ship anymore.
And at this point I thought, oh good, a Beverly episode.
She tells Guinan there's going to be a formal hearing to determine whether she'll keep her job, but Guinan says, talk to the counselor about your problems, I'm here about my elbow. And while Beverly checks out her elbow, she says the hearing is happening because she disobeyed orders, violated medical ethics, and caused an interstellar incident. So just a typical day on the Enterprise.
Damn it, that's what I was going to say. Beverly says she was curious about a Ferengi scientist's research on a new subspace technology, and she was one of the only ones who thought his work had merit, so invited a bunch of subspace scientists to convene on the ship.
The other scientists include a Vulcan and her human husband, a Klingon, and a Takaran named Jobril, who I was immediately suspicious of because he was a type of alien that we've never seen before.
And it was even more suspicious because Beverly explicitly states she doesn't know anything about him.
The Ferengi scientist, Rhaegar, explains that he has come up with a shield that would protect a ship very close to a star, but the others are skeptical.
I thought it was inside of a star.
Yeah, either way, it doesn't matter.
I think it does. I mean, there's a difference between being close to a star and being inside of a star.
Okay.
So he claims he'll fly one of the Enterprise's shuttles into the star himself to prove it.
They finally agree to allow Jobril to pilot the ship, because they trust him more, even though none of them know him either.
And how would Rhaegar be able to fake it if he's doing right in front of them? He would be inside the star. How could they say, I don't believe you? And even more pressing, why does anybody need to be inside a shuttle at all?
I'm trying to think of a good response.
That's logic. And they even have a freaking Vulcan there who can't figure that out.
Yeah, I liked how many times the Vulcan would say blah, 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 blah. It's logical or it's not logical, but the things she was saying were always the opposite of what she was saying they were. After the meeting, Rhaegar says he's not surprised that everyone is skeptical of a Ferengi scientist, but all he wants is to be respected for his achievement.
That's valid, even though he's a Ferengi.
They end up sending the shuttle toward the star while everyone monitors, and it successfully makes it into the corona.
But then suddenly, Data detects increased baryon particles inside the shuttle, which I think you said that all known matter contains baryon particles?
Well, see, but he's saying increased baryon particles, so there's an increase of matter of some kind inside the shuttles. It's a weird way to say it. I don't know why he would say it like that. And I don't know why the writers are so obsessed with the concept of baryon particles, but they bring it up all the time. And they can't beam Jobril out because of interference from the star.
Worf says they need to be 500,000 kilometers away from the star. Is that true in all cases for beaming? Haven't we had episodes where they're specifically researching stars and are right up next to them?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. And Jobril is showing signs of distress.
He manages to steer the shuttle out manually?
And if he was able to do that manually, I like how he waited until they told him to do it instead of saying, you know what, something's happening to me, I'm getting the hell out.
And I would think the shuttle itself would have safety protocols to turn around if anything went wrong.
Via voiceover, Beverly tells us that this could destroy Rhaegar's chance to be accepted by the scientific community, which was completely nonsensical. He had proven that the field worked, at least temporarily. If anything, that should have validated him.
They managed to transport Jobril to sickbay, but Beverly and the only other doctor in the room, for some reason, failed to save him.
Beverly tells Guinan the entire thing was a failure, but Guinan tells her she shouldn't take it personally. Beverly tells Guinan about how during the autopsy, she found out that Takaran's unique physiology meant that his organs weren't as distinct and isolated as human organs. even though the diagram makes it look like they are.
And there's seemingly no cause of death, reinforcing her earlier statement of, I don't know anything about this guy.
She tells Picard that whatever killed him must have happened at the cellular level. She also says that his radiation exposure was minimal, which should further validate Rhaega's invention. Picard can see that she's really pushing herself, so he decides to give her a pep talk.
You're the loneliest person in the world right now. No one can say anything. No one can do anything that will help.
In the shuttle bay, Geordi, Data, and Rhaega are investigating the shuttle to find out what went wrong, and Data says nothing went wrong. But then Geordi says he found evidence that the hull was breached by radiation. It's good that they talk to each other.
Rhaega maintains that it was not a problem with the shield. Beverly calls all the scientists together and says they need to stop with the experiments, which made no sense.
I understand not sending more people out, but why do they have to stop everything?
The other scientists agree with her, and when Rhaega says he will pilot a shielded ship himself, Beverly overrides him and says she won't authorize any other tests. And when he walks out, she tells us through voiceover that that was the last time she ever saw him alive. I didn't realize this episode was written by Stephen King.
Later, they find him dead. Worf suggests suicide, but Beverly immediately suspects someone killed him based on zero evidence and wants to do an autopsy because that will reveal evidence somehow.
She talks to Picard, but he pulls a man of the people and says she can't do the autopsy yet because Ferengi customs require a death ritual.
She immediately pushes back, outraged that she can't cut this guy up, and is confused as to why the family won't let her do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, because that's what she wants. This is Starfleet, damn it. So her next logical step is to go and openly accuse the other scientists of murdering Rhaega. Again, based on zero evidence.
She questions the Vulcan and her husband, and they eventually tell her that the Klingon and Rhaega had gotten into an argument, where Rhaega had insulted her Klingon honor, but they say they don't believe she is a killer.
Beverly goes to visit her and finds her working on the shield technology herself, and pokes and prods her endlessly until she is finally chucked across the room.
Beverly stands up to her, which was cool, and the Klingon finally admits that Rhaega accused her of sabotage, but says that he was wrong.
Since no one has admitted to being a murderer when asked, Beverly's next logical step is to violate a shit ton of rules and regulations by cutting Rhaega up anyway.
Afterwards, she visits Picard, tells him she did the autopsy and found nothing.
She then offers a half-assed, I'm not even going to call it an apology,
which should make it all okay.
I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't have done it.
Picard says she disobeyed his orders and that the family will be pissed, and it could even go all the way up to the Ferengi government. But Beverly says she knew what she was doing and will accept the consequences.
Knowing that they will be nothing.
Back in the present, she concludes her story to Guinan, who tells her that she's going to be leaving the ship anyway, so she has no reason not to keep investigating if she still believes Rhaega was murdered.
See, that's a nice way of saying it. I said, Guinan stirs her into taking more action, telling her that since she's already f***ed her career by breaking every rule they have, why is she stopping now?
Beverly talks to Data, who says there was no evidence of sabotage, and he says the only way that sabotage could even take place was during use of the shield.
And then they determine it could be done by remote from like 12 different spots on the ship. I'm glad they figured this out near the end of the episode when it's probably the first question an intelligent person would have asked.
And I like how Beverly is talking to a super intelligent android, but he doesn't figure out where she's going with her questions, and she has to keep asking questions, and even at the end of it, he still seems kind of confused. Beverly says that Rhaega's body should have evidence of a Tetryon field, so she casually goes to check it out.
Riker catches her on the way, but then she says, I don't really care, and nothing further is going to happen to me no matter what I do. And he doesn't disagree, and just walks off.
In sickbay, the nurse pulls up the autopsy files since Beverly no longer has access, and they do a scan on the body, but don't find anything. So Beverly says, do an enhanced scan, and then they find the Tetryon traces. Beverly says there's only one way to know for sure if it was sabotage, and then walks out without explaining what she was talking about because it's more dramatic that way. On the bridge, Data detects an unscheduled shuttle launch, which of course turns out to be Beverly going out to test the shield herself.
Again, why doesn't she just send out the shuttle by itself? Why does she have to be inside the shuttle?
Good question.
And of course, they can't get a tractor beam lock because she's too close to the star. So I guess solar radiation is going to be one of the excuses we add to the list of why they can't do stuff.
And I like how she somehow immediately got close enough to the star to prevent that tractor beam from working.
Even though they were watching the shuttle in real time jet out of the Enterprise. Let's talk about it for 15 minutes before we decide to take any action.
And I like that they're also still hanging around the star for no reason. Beverly explains what she's doing and is adamant that she is right, because she's Beverly.
That's her entire justification for this whole episode.
She enters the Corona and immediately congratulates Dr. Rega, even though Jabril was inside the Corona for longer before anything went wrong.
There is no radiation exposure, which confirms Beverly's suspicions that they were sabotaged, so she tells Picard to post security around the other scientists. But then suddenly her communication is cut off, and I was hoping it was because she was wrong, and the research was flawed, and she was wrong about everything, and just died.
On the shuttle, Jabril pops out of a panel, which reminded me of the alien being on the shuttle at the end of the first Alien movie.
Except that movie was good.
He reveals that Takarans can control their cellular activity to make themselves appear dead.
And I found it hilarious that he claimed it should have been obvious to a doctor, proving that Beverly is just terrible.
I had some questions here, because she found evidence of the tetrion particles or whatever on the Takaran's body, and Geordi said there was evidence that the ship was affected by radiation. So does that mean that Jabril remotely set up some kind of interference thing from the Enterprise while he was on the shuttle?
I guess. But that seems too smart for this episode. And they never come out and say it, so who knows.
Yeah.
Jabril says he's going to turn the research into a weapon, but not exactly how he's going to do that.
Because that's what bad guys do. He tampers with the shuttle to make the Enterprise think there has been a warp engine breach.
But did he account for Troy being able to sense people and stuff, or is she also affected by solar radiation?
At this point, I didn't even think to ask that question.
And Data says he detected the breach, but there's no debris. So it's all suspicious. Everything's suspicious. So it's a stupid plan.
Beverly easily knocks the phaser out of Jabril's hand and sends the shuttle farther into the star. While they fight, she whips out her martial arts moves.
Yeah, that's what this episode was missing.
And then she blasts a hole through Jabril, which luckily didn't continue on through the shuttle.
But it doesn't kill him, so she turns it up and hits him again.
She flies the shuttle back out, and everyone is happy.
We get a log entry saying she's been completely reinstated with absolutely no consequences or follow-up to any rules, regulations, cultural traditions, accusations, insinuations, or confrontations that she either started herself, violated, or discarded.
She goes to 10 forward with a thank you present for Guinan, which turns out to be a space tennis racket that should help with her tennis elbow.
But the one thing we were missing in this episode was a stupid joke. But we get one of those too, where Guinan reveals she never played tennis in her life. So good. My last note is just a giant LOL. Suspicions. Overall?
This was easily the best Beverly-centric episode we've had so far. I liked that Beverly was going against orders and doing things that she knew she shouldn't, instead of doing the right thing every time. Although it was really dumb that there were no repercussions from that in the end. I just thought it gave her a little more depth, made her a more interesting character.
But by making her
a bad guy.
I think we're going to have very, very different grades on this episode.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I liked that we had a Ferengi that wasn't a stereotype, and that he didn't turn out to be lying or just trying to carry out some scheme. Some parts of the episode didn't make sense, especially the way everyone reacted to how the experiment went. Obviously, if you try something once and it doesn't work, you don't immediately give up. I mean, look at how long we've been doing this YouTube channel. This episode wasn't anything special, but I did enjoy it. I gave it a B-.
Holy crap. The first note of my wrap-up is this episode. I gave this one an F+.
Jeez.
The only thing I liked was what you pointed out of the non-stereotypical Ferengi. That was it. This episode was so stupid. There is a difference between being assertive and being entitled, and I don't think Beverly knows the difference. I like that the twist of Jabril's supposed death and then being tricked was a result of Beverly just being a shitty doctor. And her narrating everything was really dumb, especially because everything she said was obvious already. She was explicitly telling us things that had just happened. Like when she said, Rega seemed angry, after he f***ing yelled at everybody. Who was this episode written for? Little kids? You apparently, so you're a little kid, or have the mentality of one. I'm not gonna put that in. And I think it's interesting how you liked how she didn't always follow orders, because to me, in this episode, she was the most aggressively confrontational bitch. I mean, if I walked up to someone and said, I bet you murdered someone yesterday and I have zero evidence, they would probably not like that. And she was so smug throughout the entire episode and just convinced she was right. And her apology, that wasn't even really an apology, knowing nothing would happen to her anyway, it was almost like she was annoyed that she had to pretend to apologize. And then her being vindicated by continuing to break even more rules and then nothing happening, but instead being congratulated on everything she did was infuriating. How can she still be allowed to be the chief medical officer on the flagship after doing all of this?
Well, but see, she didn't violate the Prime Directive, and that's what really matters. That's all she needed for her defense, because she said, hey, if you're going to keep Picard there, he did worse than me, don't look at me.
That's true. There wasn't really a mystery. There was the illusion of a mystery, but she and other characters explicitly stated multiple times what was going on, but then pretended like they didn't know what was going on. It was dumb. It made me angry. I didn't like this episode. If there had been an actual mystery and an actual investigation with actual things revealed over time, this episode might have been good. But this one is definitely a contender for the worst episode of the season for me.
Oh, man.
I can't believe you put this one at B range.
After thinking about it, I am going to lower it to a C+. A B- is how much I enjoyed it, but it definitely was not as good as I enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a C+.
I like how you say after thinking about it instead of after hearing you give good evidence of why it wasn't as good as I thought it was.
I don't know. You don't...
With Troy, she kind of fell in the same boat where she didn't have good episodes, but then we get something like Face of the Enemy. Beverly has not gotten one of those yet, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, this one was not as good as that, but I did enjoy it.
At this point, I was pretty angry, and I wanted to stop the recording and fly into a star and just end it all.